What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao, bringing you the news from Taipei this afternoon. Taiwan is battling to keep diplomatic ally Guatemala, one of just 12 countries around the world that officially recognizes Taipei. Rick Lauer joins us live from here in the capital. Rick, what's the latest?
Well, Taipei and Beijing are having a diplomatic war of words. That's after Guatemala said it wanted to pursue more trade with China while keeping relations with Taipei. China has made it very clear that that is not an option for the Central American country. It's urged Guatemala to cut ties with Taipei and to recognize Beijing's claims of sovereignty over Taiwan. Basically, that it's one or the other. The foreign ministry here in Taiwan, meanwhile, has sought to play down fears of another diplomatic loss. It's saying that ties between Guatemala and Taiwan are rock solid.
So why is it so important for Taiwan to hold on to a diplomatic ally like Guatemala?
Well, Taiwan's officials, diplomatic allies, give it legitimacy on the world stage, and they refute Beijing's claims of sovereignty over Taiwan. They also help Taiwan to speak up in international organizations that it's otherwise shut out of, like the United Nations. But recently, Beijing has been playing what Taiwan calls dollar diplomacy. That's offering trade and investment to countries if they give up ties with Taipei in favor of Beijing. This has cut down the number of countries that officially recognize Taiwan to just 12. But analysts are now saying that this is an expensive game that Taiwan cannot and should not continue to play, and that Taiwan should instead continue to focus on building those unofficial ties with like-minded countries in places like Europe and the Americas.
Thank you, Rick. That was Rick Lauer joining us from Taipei. 65 people died of COVID-19 in Taiwan last week, a 5-month high. COVID and flu cases are surging across the country. More than 120,000 people sought medical help for flu symptoms last week. The health ministry is expecting fewer cases as the weather gets warmer and more people get flu shots. There's some relief for Taiwan shoppers as January's consumer price index hit a 7-month low. January's CPI grew about 1.8%, lower than last January's 3%. But the group of 17 necessities that the government monitors saw a 3.27% jump, with the biggest contributors being pork at 8% and chicken at 5%. The government says the big year-on-year overall drop is largely because of the timing of the Lunar New Year. The holiday fell in January last year, setting a higher base of comparison. Taiwan's president is wrapping up an inspection of some of the country's newest conscripts. But as Jaime Ocon reports, this could be the one and only time she makes this kind of visit.
President Tang Wen is thanking Taiwan's newest batch of troops for their contribution to the country's defense, just ahead of the Lunar New Year break. These young men are part of the country's first wave of one-year conscripts. Tsai extended mandatory military service from 4 months to 1 year back in 2022 to boost Taiwan's defenses. And although this is her first time visiting conscripts like these, it might also be the last, as she finishes her second and final term in office in May.
我也期许各位弟兄姐妹持续勤训精练，也精进自我。我要请国防部落实各项训练课程的执行，并且滚动的检讨，确保训练的品质和成效。
Tsai says part of the decision to extend military service was the threats coming from neighboring China, which seeks to bring Taiwan under its control. But there are also plans to reform the military, focusing on 4 main groups. These include Taiwan's main force, a volunteer army that fights on the front lines, conscript troops that support that army, civil defense personnel for medical and emergency relief, and a nationwide reservist program to provide additional troops in the event of a war.
The volunteer force to focus more on being the sort of like tip of the spear, right? They're the combat force, but even large combat forces need large logistics forces to support them. And also increasing conscript familiarity with things like U.S. provided weaponry, so that way they know how to use it if they need to.
Taiwan has also been leaning on its largest defense ally, the U.S., for weapons and assistance. This group of soldiers here is one of a small handful that traveled to the U.S. for training. And Taiwan might continue to send some military personnel there to better prepare its soldiers.
因为台湾的地形比较有限，所以很可能就是可以进行 整个联兵营的全套的一个操演，包括步炮装，还有甚至是空中兵力、无人机，还有就是这个电磁空间的通信对抗，等等的这个全套的一个营级作战的模式，都可以充分的在美国的基地展开。
The conscripts here are training for 8 weeks before they're being deployed across Taiwan to various roles. And President Tsai is hoping that her plans remain in place after she steps down to provide the country's troops with the resources and training necessary to defend Taiwan. Ryan Wu and Amil Khan for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's government watchdog has impeached 2 Marines for covering up the loss of a military-issued gun in 2022. The commanding officer of a training center was impeached because he did not report the missing weapon. Instead, he allegedly recruited a battalion commander and 4 others to raise money to purchase a model gun to replace the missing one in the armory. The battalion commander was also impeached. The case is part of a string of misconduct in Taiwan's military, the most recent being a U.S.-made anti-air missile part found in the possession of gang members last year. Former President Chen Shui-bian's son has been released on parole after serving 9 months out of his 1-year sentence for corruption. Last April, Chen Zizong was found guilty of money laundering and fined almost $50,000 on top of his jail term. Plus, he was removed as a Kaohsiung city councilor. Chen's wife also got a suspended sentence last year for her role in the scheme. The couple were found to have made over $8 million in illegal profits. That money has been turned over to the national treasury. Facing ever-growing climate threats, Taiwan's agriculture industry needs to find ways to adapt. Sally Jensen went to Miaoli County to meet one strawberry farmer who's taking a risk and going organic.
Carefully inspecting his fruit, Jan Yiqiang took over the family's strawberry farm from his father. But like many others here in Taiwan's Miaoli County, Jan's livelihood is threatened by rising temperatures.
现在在我们台湾来讲的话，尾雕病好像没办法根治，应该是气候。我们要把气候先慢慢的把它再回到以前的那个气候，不要让气候越来越恶劣。
One of his varieties, the Meifeng, has been hit by pests which proliferate in warmer weather. Over the decades, rising temperatures have almost eliminated the heat-sensitive Fengxiang, formerly the most common variety, in the small town of Dahu. This is Dahu in north-central Taiwan, the country's strawberry capital. Almost all of the country's 6.6 million kilos of strawberries are harvested here each winter, with an annual value of around $40 million. But rising global temperatures have meant that winters here are getting warmer, and farmers have seen their yields plummet. Ye Zhenhao is a researcher at the local agricultural research station and has observed the change. He is now trying to help Dahu's strawberry farmers weather the storm.
所以我们同时也有在做一些可能栽培方法的改变，对，包括说可能设置一些遮阴或者遮雨，或者说不同的覆盖去，比较能够让田间降温的方法的一些实验。
On his wife's advice, farmer Jan went to Ye and his team to learn how to go organic. He now ferments his own fertilizer and pesticide from organic waste like fruit peel, which he says have improved his crop. He now makes extra cash from selling a new variety, a Japanese white strawberry. And this year, the old Fengxiang, which he had all but lost hope for, has made a surprising comeback.
我现在又开始要回归于它了。白草莓不是我的主打，它才是我的主打的，才是真正的草莓。
Strawberries are not Taiwan's only crop struggling against warmer temperatures. And while the threats facing the country's little red fruit grow ever bigger, farmers like Jan are finding new ways to bring hope for a sweeter future. Andy Xue and Sally Jensen in Miaoli County for TaiwanPlus.
The Thai government is racing to ban recreational cannabis use in the country. Thailand's health minister says they will propose a bill to control the drug at a cabinet meeting next week. If approved, it will limit cannabis to medicinal uses only. Under the previous government, Thailand became the first Asian country to decriminalize cannabis in 2022. This created an unregulated market whose value is expected to exceed $1 billion by next year. A pod of killer whales appears to be trapped in drift ice off the coast of Hokkaido in northern Japan. Drone footage shows at least 10 orcas clustered together 1 kilometer from the town of Raisu, poking their heads out of a small gap in the ice to breathe. The town says thick ice makes it impossible for the Coast Guard to free the orcas, and they'll have to wait for the ice to break or to move. 9 orcas died in 2005 after getting trapped in that same area. A Taiwanese textile firm is taking on its waste problem, turning fast fashion leftovers that would have been thrown away into useful everyday objects. John Van Trieste has this report.
This factory is the test ground for an idea that could clean up the environment and help whole communities. It belongs to Taiwanese fabric maker Textile Enterprise, a firm whose big-name customers include Victoria's Secret. But each month, over 12,000 tons of its materials go to waste, either because they're unusable scraps or because they fail quality control. All this keeps the local incinerator very busy. The company has to pay large sums to have it all burned, and the process puts carbon as well as smoke into the atmosphere. But the firm's owner, 40-year textile industry veteran Huang Guopeng, has thought of a way to stop this flood of waste while also giving people joy. The idea came when he watched a movie in which the main character enjoys crafting. Why not turn the waste into something? Last year, he opened a crafting classroom where people can learn how to put leftover scraps of cloth to use. They can make cute decorations, clothes, and indigenous Taiwanese regalia.
像我们有丰年祭嘛，就会想说带个比较简单的，这样子也结婚也可以带。
Or more involved projects like yarn bags. It's early days yet, but several hundred people have already taken part in the workshop.
我的想法就是说来这里玩一天而已，啊，就是说把它提供一个场地嘛，反正大家来这里做环保，对我来讲，我是减碳嘛，对不对？我也许可以得到碳权啊。
And the idea is spreading. The classroom is sending unwanted scraps to schools and community centers across Taiwan. And it's even planning to send fabric to Turkey's Syrian border, an area home to many Syrian refugees that's also recovering from a magnitude 7.8 earthquake last year. The hope is to teach people how to use these bits of cloth to create useful items, turning what was an environmental problem into a force for positive change. Joseph Wu and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Fields of gold are attracting people from far and wide to Taiwan's southeast coast. Laurel Stewart reports on how the irresistible crop is able to maintain its pull on the public.
Nestled between these mountains in Taitung, this valley of gold is not just an essential crop for farmers. The rapeseed flowers also draw tourists to Zhishan every year. The crop is usually harvested at the beginning of spring, but with this year's Lunar New Year falling later than usual, some worried they wouldn't have time to visit the area while the crop's in bloom. To solve the problem, the government is subsidizing farmers to delay their harvests till after the New Year, so more tourists can visit over the holiday period.
协调跟秦商大约播了90公顷，在伯公庙前面，它的画面是最美的，尤其当我们的火车经过的时候。
Farmers usually grow rapeseed before planting rice, the other crop that Zhishan is known for. It helps increase soil fertility and reduces the amount of fertilizer they need to use. But in Zhishan, it's also a central part of the seasonal cuisine.
它期限很短啦，基本上在半个月至1个月内就不会吃得到这一道我们比较特别在中午线吃得到的油菜花。
And it's a novelty for tourists too.
都是吃芥蓝炒牛肉，没有吃过说那个油菜炒牛肉。
And by extending the harvest season a little longer than usual, the aim is to bring a touch of gold to everyone visiting Zhishan over the new year. Ryan Wu and Laurel Stewart for TaiwanPlus.
Thanks for joining us here on What's Up Taiwan. Grab our mobile app to get more of our reports on the go. Finally, feast your eyes on the cherry blossoms in central Taiwan's Wuling Farm. I'm Eric Gao. Take care of yourselves.